All right, let's dive into a really fascinating economic puzzle today. It's a story all about a single commodity, but it tells you so much about a country's past, its present, and its future. We are talking about rubber in India. So get this. India is a real powerhouse in the rubber world. It's the sixth largest producer of natural rubber on the entire planet. That's a major player in a market that, literally keeps the world moving. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Its appetite for rubber, it's even bigger. India is the world's second largest consumer of the stuff, fueling a huge and growing manufacturing sector. So you've got a top producer and a top consumer, all in one. So that's the big question, right? If you're making so much and you're using so much, why on earth are you one of the world's top importers of the stuff? It doesn't quite add up, and that contradiction is exactly what we're going to unpack today. Okay, so to get to the bottom of this, we've got to first understand what rubber even is and what it's used for. And the answer is a little more complex than you might think, and it has huge implications for why countries trade the way they do. You see, when we talk about rubber, it's not just one thing. It's really a tale of two very different materials. First, you have natural rubber, which comes from the latex of the hevea tree. Think of it as a farm crop, mostly grown in Southeast Asia. It's known for being incredibly strong and resilient. Then you have synthetic rubber, which is actually made from oil. It's super versatile and can be produced in massive quantities for very specific jobs, like making sure your car's tires have a great grip on the road. Now, you might think rubber is in everything. Gloves, hoses, you name it. And you'd be right. But, and this is wild, a massive 72% of all of it gets devoured by just one single industry. And yep, you guessed it, that industry is tires. This is where natural rubber is king. For a regular car tire, we're talking about maybe 15% natural rubber. But for a giant truck or airplane tire that has to handle incredible stress and heat, whoa, that can shoot up to 95%. And that right there is a huge clue in our puzzle. But the story doesn't just stop at the factory. To really solve this puzzle, we have to look back in time. Because the history of rubber, well, it's complicated and it's deeply tied to politics. And where you were in the world really determined what that history looked like. And this is where you see two totally different paths. On one side, you've got places like the Congo Free State, which went through a truly brutal period of what historians call robber colonialism. Rubber was basically ripped out of the land through horrific violence. But India's path? Completely different. After independence, the focus was on something called import substitution. Basically trying to be self-sufficient by growing its own rubber plantations. So you have this incredibly violent history in some places versus this very domestic self-sufficiency strategy in India. And those two different histories, they created totally different industries and legacies that, believe it or not, still affect global trade patterns today. Okay, so with that history in mind, let's get back to our main mystery. We know what rubber is for, and we know India's original game plan was to make its own. So what changed? Let's look at the numbers. And boom, here it is, the heart of the problem, right in front of us. Just look at these numbers for 2019-20. India used over 1.1 million tons of rubber, but only made around 710,000 tons. That is a massive gap of more than 400,000 tons. The country's appetite for rubber just blows past what it can actually produce at home. So you've got this huge shortfall. What do? Well, you've got to buy it from someone else. You turn to the global market. And it turns out, India relies pretty heavily on just a handful of countries to fill that gap. Almost half of its rubber imports come from these 5 nations alone. Now, relying this much on imports can get tricky. It opens the door to some, let's say, aggressive global market tactics. One of those is something called dumping. Basically, it's when a country sells its stuff abroad for way cheaper than it sells it at home, which can really undercut and hurt local producers in the country that's buying. But it's not always about shady tactics. A lot of the time, it just comes down to plain old economics. It's not just about how much rubber is available from other countries, it's also about the price. Why are these imports so darn competitive in the first place? And this is a biggie. For manufacturers, price is king. If you look at the world market back in 2019, major players like Thailand and China could often sell their natural rubber for less than India. And if you're a tire company buying thousands of tons of this stuff, well, you can see how that small price difference becomes a really big deal. It's a powerful reason to import. Okay, so let's put all the pieces together. The mystery is solved. It really is a perfect storm, isn't it? You've got this massive, skyrocketing demand from the auto industry. You've got production at home that just can't keep up, so you have to import to fill the gap. And on top of all that, fierce global competition often makes those imports the cheaper choice. It all just clicks into place. And that leaves us with one final, really big question. For a country with huge ambitions like the Make in India initiative, this whole rubber situation is a massive challenge. So, how do you balance it all? How do you keep your giant rubber-hungry industries happy while also making sure your own domestic rubber producers can survive and thrive? Figuring that out, well, that's absolutely key to India's industrial future.